My name is Vuyelwa Mwagamashwama. I work for Eswatini Communications Commission, the regulator for the communications sector in the country. So I would like to talk or maybe make a presentation on e-commerce to say, if you were to be running a business in this day and age, I think it is important to consider and going online, and that would be e-commerce. Firstly, let me introduce the Commission. As I had indicated, we regulate different sectors, the communication sector, which would include telecoms, broadcasting, postal and courier, and electronic commerce. And now recently, we now regulate data protection and cybersecurity. And when it comes to e-commerce, the relevant laws that, as a regulator, I have to mention this. The relevant laws would be the Electronic Communications and Transaction Act 2022. This looks at issues around businesses online. So it looks at e-signatures, digital contracts, goguthi logo sekusho kokuthi nako seku-authentic. For instance, if you're sending an invoice online, it's authentic. You don't necessarily need to be submitting a hard copy. And then we have data protection, which looks at personal data. That when we're doing a lot of business online, right now, I want to believe a majority of us do buy online. There's a lot of personal data that you put in online. So this legal framework looks at safeguarding your personal data online. And then lastly, the Computer and Cybercrime Act of 2022. So this one is looking at combating cyber threats. Recently, we've had a lot of attacks, and all of that. So that act is looking, in addition, a lot of other things, but that as well. And what is e-commerce? So e-commerce is short for electronic commerce and refers to the sale of goods and services over computer networks. However, what is very important is that the order has to be online, which means that you have to have an online shop platform, but then payment and delivery can happen outside. I know that in the country, what is mostly popular, we have a Facebook page, thank you. We have a Facebook page or Instagram, and then siyabeka my products or WhatsApp as well. Siya advertise my products and then someone talks and they like DM, and what have you not. So far, that is not considered e-commerce. They've termed it social commerce, which is mostly in the country we have found that we are more active on social commerce than e-commerce. And the reason why that is not good for us as a country, it's because it is hard to regulate. So if someone sends something on WhatsApp, umbadale uqede abesa sakudeliver utambopha njani utamkhanzaphi. Even on Facebook, there are a lot of scams. Siyabaya advertise Facebook, umfake ungene kuma DMs umuntu nikhulume niqede transaction uzumbhadale kulokunye, but igcine le tinto takho tingakafiki. So, but basically, so then we're saying e-commerce should happen on a platform. Goguthi, you have created an online shop where someone can place an order. Basically, maybe the payment and everything can happen outside that. But kuba easier to then track. Logoguthi, they've talked about payment solutions as well, of which we might have a problem with in the country. I'm happy that the Central Bank is here. And then you as a business, you process the order in terms of you have probably maybe a warehouse somewhere where you order lako, where so order and all of that. You connect with your courier company, lapagu fulfillment and delivery, bahambe bayo deliver wherever the customer has indicated to deliver on. And then post and purchase. Basically, after sale service. Because online, possible you bought something and then and then I have to return it. And whatever online store should have that option. It's called a return policy. Because I can only interact with the product. So those are the post-purchase support issues. And also, number 6, as a business, it gives you the opportunity. You're sort of like looking at my products and services. So you then start selling, but so you sort of like prompt or cross-sell some of your products and services. So basically, this is what an e-commerce process looks like at a high level. And e-commerce models, they come in different forms, but mainly businesses are selling to businesses, and then you've got businesses selling to customers, probably, which is you and I, and then sometimes we move the middleman and we buy directly to owners, and that is D2C, which is direct to customer. But then also as consumers, we can sell to each other. Maybe platforms where as a person, you want to sell like your second-hand clothes, or maybe and then you want to sell them. So there are platforms that actually allow that. And then also there's consumer to business. Basically, maybe you're a freelancer, you are a graphic designer, for instance, or you are a photographer. So you sell your services to certain businesses. And then Segbana B2G, which is mainly businesses selling to government. So those are the mainly business models that e-commerce can take up. And so you have 2 options as a small business to maybe start up an online store. You have something called a marketplace, and which is similar to something more Amazon, and I'm sure all of us are familiar with Take a Lot. And then an e-commerce platform of which you develop yourself. So the difference between the two, or maybe I'll point it out via my advantages. In marketplace, it's an already set up store. It's almost like a supermarket, different products, different brands of everything in one store. So all you do you just upload your products as well. No creation thing. It's already a set up marketplace in the actual sense of the word. But an e-commerce platform or online, it's when now you set it up yourself. So the advantages between the two. For a marketplace, for instance, it's increased visibility. When you put up your product on Take a Lot, it's already an established platform. Everyone knows it. We all shop on Take a Lot or Amazon. So then all you do is just plug in. And then also because of that, the startup cost so cheap. However, the catch is commission, in the sense that because there's already a platform set up for you, and then the commission and fees then become just a bit higher. And then if now you are going to start your own platform, now you have control over the store. Basically, store only your products. You have access to the customer data. You are seeing your behavior in a customer arco. So that one advantage there, you can customize it. Now, in the marketplace, you can't use your colors or branding or anything like that. Yet neither you can customize it to whatever you want. However, cost and starting up all of this could actually be very high, because starting up in the platforms can be very high. However, what you can do, you can then maybe use platforms like an e-commerce shop, for instance, Shopify. It gives you all the services. It's just that you have to buy or maybe subscribe to the platform. And then looking at e-commerce activity, I'm not sure what's going to pass. So we always get the question, are people in the country buying online? And yes, people are buying online in Eswatini. So there is appetite for that, because maybe as a small business you might be worried with online. They will buy online, there is appetite. So we have data maybe from June 2023 to 2025 in terms of the volume of the amount of e-commerce activity that has taken place in the country. We have 13.2 thousand of volumes of parcels of people that have bought online on Shein. And number 2 is Amazon, which is standing at 9.5. And then you've got Temu at 5.9, and then Alibaba, and then there's Takealot, and there's Superbalist, Lapekinen. So basically, this is to show that the appetite to e-commerce is there in the country, it's happening, so people are buying online. And also, we then have looked at each share in terms of the amount spent. If you look at the amounts, you can see that a lot of people are buying from Shein or Alibaba in the country. This is everyone buying from outside the country. We have very little or no data of people buying products and services. So this is the onus on you to please do create e-commerce platforms from local products and all of that. So Shein is international, all of these are international. Take a lot of South African, but there's nothing local. So this is just to say, please do create e-commerce platforms, whatever products that you have, so that you still will be online. And in 2023, the Commission conducted a study just to find out, in terms of readiness as a country, where do we have challenges? And there was a long list, but we just picked up, these are not a few, but like that are more specific to small businesses. There's limited use of e-commerce platforms in the country, as I've indicated, and most people, I know that the data people are buying online, but there's still an issue of trust. So online, that is why so a business model runners. So what runners are doing, I don't know if you know the term, do you know the term? So runners meaning that Alibaba. And then you pay me a fee of 30% of your whole consignment. Now it's anything that 1,000, but they charge 30% of 1,000. So maybe so that is what has happened, because a majority of the Maswati are not trusting online payments, meaning the father and card details. And then some have cited that there are high data costs. So that is why e-commerce online platforms or even buy online, data is very high. And then we have issues with logistics. We know that we lack formal addresses in the country physically. We are now saying, so we have an issue with that, hence there's a limited activity locally in terms of e-commerce. And then the informality of businesses, Zion has spoken about the issue that you need to formalize your business. Banks or financial institutions, they're structured, they're not going to give you money if they don't see the business plan, what is the return on investment and all of that. So most of our small businesses are informal. So when they then get into an online space. And then also, we have a small-scale supply capacity. We are saying we want to, when you get in online, basically you're not limited to the Swazi market. Your market is global. However, the question would be, if you are for instance, 1,000 XRs, do you have them? Can you supply? Or if that's every day? So we also have an issue with the small capacity or scaling of businesses, business aid for the small businesses. And then also, there's a low digital literacy and e-commerce skills, in the sense that if you're going e-commerce, everything is digital, so then therefore you need to be able to understand apps, AI, there are privacy issues even with that, so you need to understand also that. And then there's also difficulty securing funding. I'm happy that that has been covered. I hope that today we'll be knocking on his door just to get some funding. And then lastly, we have developed an e-commerce strategy as a country, maybe to address some of the issues Lesson mentioned earlier. And looking at the process of e-commerce, we are saying there's pillar 1, which we have to attend to, which is selling. Basically, as small businesses, this pillar is looking into that. We'll say, do we have the capacity? From the strategy, it's saying that there needs to be a lot of capacity building when it comes to digital skills, e-commerce and all of that. And then also in terms of scaling up on the products and services aid, because not saying you sell something online, it needs to be packaged well, it needs to be labeled well and all of that. So there needs to be a lot of capacity that needs to be undertaken. And then pillar 2 takes on buying. As I've indicated, we do not have a local e-commerce platforms in the country. To be, we would say, as small businesses, we start developing those. So that then looks at the other end. It looks at there are then opportunities also for young people that are developers to develop e-commerce platforms for small businesses at reasonable prices, because maybe that's another issue. And then there's the issue of digital payments. In our engagements, I'm happy that the central bank is here. We found that some of the small businesses were saying for those that have e-commerce platforms, they can't fulfill the process e-commerce until checkout and payments, because we do not have a national gateway as yet, which I'm hoping that soon we'll have that. And then the issue of transport and logistics. And then underneath again, there's a segment of issues that are cutting across legal frameworks, and we're looking at there's a focus on gender, youth, and special needs inclusion in our strategy. And then we're looking at issues of connectivity and security, because e-commerce relies on the internet and how quick and how efficient it is. If that is not there, then next excellent. If you look at e-commerce as a process, it touches on a lot of stakeholders, and the small businesses, the ICT sector up in terms of development, there's payments, which involves the financial sector, and then the transport sector. So all of those have to come together to form an ecosystem that will enable e-commerce. So this is basically the gist of the e-commerce strategy that we've just developed as a country. Thank you very much.